So, after he's doing this practice for his 49 days, on the morning of the 49th day, he's supposed to have seen the morning star, Venus, and at that point, just kind of got it, some kind of an understanding, uh, and and he realized that this understanding was nothing like the things the other religious teachers and other supposedly wise people he had met before taught. It was something completely different, but it was something completely reliable and true that he knew was real. But he wasn't sure anybody could possibly understand this thing that he'd gotten. At first he decided to keep it to himself. He decided he'd just kind of, keep this thing to himself and live his life according to his understanding, but not try to teach it. And the legend goes that, is it Indra, I think, the head of the Hindu gods, came and persuaded him that he had to give this knowledge to the people. And give this understanding and try to teach it. So at first he looked for his two teachers that he'd gone with before, because he thought that they might understand it. But he found that both of them had already died. So we can hear the Hanyara and Shingo. It started early, didn't it? Anyway. He decided to look for these guys, but he found out they'd already died. So he decided, well, maybe those guys he was wandering around with as an ascetic might understand it. So he sought those guys out, and when he found them, they decided they still didn't want to have anything to do with him, because he was a sellout and all that. So they were going to ignore him, but when he came nearby, they kind of saw he had glow about him, or some kind of a sense that he might have something. And I believe that's what the next picture, that next picture may be just turning the Dharma wheel, I think it is, when he actually started to teach what it was that he had to teach. And those guys eventually decided they'd follow him. They became the first Buddhists. And the last picture there just represents his death. Whenever you see Buddha lying on his side, he's the dead Buddha. He always looks like the mellowed out resting Buddha to me, but he's supposed to be the dead Buddha. And the thing that he taught in that first lecture was the Four Noble Truths, the turning of the Dharma wheel. And when I was at the Still Point Zen Center in Detroit, the Korean Zen Center, or Korean. Actually, their first teacher was a Korean person, but there's very few Korean people who attend the Zen Center anymore. They're all non-Korean now. But anyway, they're from a Korean tradition. But they have this card that they pass out, which has the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. So I'm set. Anytime I forget it, I got it in my wallet. But this has the traditional interpretation of the Buddha's Four Noble Truths, which they give on the card as there is suffering. Number 2, suffering's cause is craving. 3, suffering can be stopped. And 4, the Eightfold Path is the way leading to the extinction of suffering. And Nishijima Sensei has who's the guy who started this particular retreat that we're on, has a different take on these Four Noble Truths. Because he said that when he listened to the traditional interpretation of the Four Noble Truths, they didn't really make sense to him. That Buddhism as a philosophy and Dogen's philosophy made a whole lot of sense, but when he listened to the traditional interpretation of the Four Noble Truths, it didn't seem to fit in with that. So he started looking for a different way of understanding the Four Noble Truths. And he explains it. And actually, now I'm just thinking about this now. I don't think the traditional explanation or the traditional interpretation of the Four Noble Truths ever appears in Shobo Genzo, although obviously Dogen was a Buddhist. He never gives this interpretation, so the chances are that Dogen was unsatisfied with this as well. But these guys are chanting the Heart Sutra, and the Heart Sutra at one point goes Kushu Metsudo, which is the traditional Japanese, Chinese. It's Chinese pronounced in Japanese, derived from Sanskrit, of the Four Noble Truths. And ku is kurushi or suffering. It's dukkha satya is the word in Sanskrit, and that describes suffering. And the second one is shu, which shu is the kanji. It's usually pronounced atsumeru, atsumaru, which means bringing things together. And it's often interpreted as the truth of aggregates, which refers to the traditional interpretation that as I mentioned before, Buddhism rejects the idea of a human soul and says that each person is a conglomeration of the five aggregates, which, this is embarrassing, I can't remember the five off the top of my head: consciousness and form, anyway, five of them. And this idea of craving or bringing things together is the kind of key point to that one. And the third one is Nirodha Satya, which is destruction. The Kushu Metsu, the Metsu is a Chinese character which stands for destruction, which refers to the destroying of the, in traditional interpretation anyway, the destroying of craving. And the fourth one is the path, which is the same, Do. This idea of the origin of suffering is desire, and the extinction of desire is the way to extinguish suffering. It's a nice romantic notion, but it doesn't really work. It's impossible to completely get rid of desire, and I really can't think of any. Although it's the traditional Buddhist line that the third noble truth is destroying desire is the way to destroy suffering. I don't know of any Buddhists who really go out of their way to try to destroy desire. So the interpretation that Nishijima Sensei likes to give is that the first noble truth stands for idealism. If we look at everything from an idealistic point of view, or the way things are in our minds, everything seems to be suffering because nothing can ever match up to what you imagine it ought to be. Our imagination is kind of vague, but we're always vaguely dissatisfied with everything. It's not quite what we want because we can always imagine something better. The second one is materialism, and the reason Nishijima Sensei has chosen to interpret that as materialism is because one of the other ways of interpreting the original wording of this, rather than saying that the cause of suffering is desire, is to interpret it as the truth of aggregation, or the idea that there are that things in the material world are aggregates of